For my half hour, it'll be about a half-hour talk. I'd like to give you an idea of what my art is about and how it led to the tapestries I created for the wall of the UK University of Reading Library. It's a unique variation of the 10 and then 11 separate tapestries I did for a multi-part exhibition, which has traveled internationally to museums for now, I guess it's almost 2 decades. This traveling exhibit is now at the United States Museum of Biblical Art in Dallas, Texas. I'll briefly mention the 11 heroes included, but more information can be found on the Reading Art Collection's interactive tool about this tapestry. I'm interested in how art can start a conversation about empathy, that magic word, empathy, for the other, the disdained other, the other that people don't want on their shores, in their workplaces, and certainly not in their homes. My nonprofit, Have Art Will Travel, HART for short, addresses otherness, including issues of racism, sexism, and all the other isms. Being a feminist, or whatever current word is used now in the UK, is especially important in these times when many think misogyny is on the rise. It makes me laugh to think back at how I earnestly tried to explain feminism to Borat in his movie before kicking him out of my studio. Remember, he was disguised as a Kazakhstan reporter, and I was filmed for what I thought was a documentary to help third world women, and definitely not, I was told, to be shown in America or any developed countries. And I started out so earnestly. I'm having just a little bit of trouble advancing from one slide to another. I'm not quite sure why that's happening, but let me try again here.
So what that means is this, feminism. Give me a smile, baby. Why angry face?
Well, what you're saying is very demeaning. Do you know the word demeaning?
No.
We are saying...
Last night I see in my hotel room a woman called CJ on a television. Do you know her?
No.
Listen, pussycat, smile a bit.
Okay, I'm done. I walked out, but after the movie, in email after email from men, they asked me the same question. Why don't you feminists have any sense of humor about misogyny? Quote, unquote. Actually, in his movie prizing women who had tits and ass attributes, Sacha Baron Cohen invites men to feel okay about their hostility to women. Is this happening again today? Are American leaders in particular encouraging men to take back their strength? My art addresses protection and, yes, strength through the lens of bullying and bigotry. Art is a powerful way, a fun way even, to allow minds to explore and expand, even to what I call body swapping, to reimagine another identity, perhaps one that's more other-oriented and self-sacrificing. Body swapping was in a traveling exhibition going on to, I don't know, maybe 30 venues called The Fluidity of Gender. In this show, people physically tried on a new avatar and body swapped with my wearable sculpture into the role of the brave upstander. For this, I coined, as Hannah said, the 4 Bs to use as a teaching tool: bully, bullied, bystander, and brave upstander. My goal as an artist is to use my gender-bending art to inspire upstander behavior for peace, diversity, and equity. The University of Reading's art collection owns 3 prints from my gender scrambling series: this one, and this one. With my art archives at Smith College and my art education archives at Penn State University, my practice has always been focused on the theme of protection, long before this Holocaust series took form. I would use pop culture icons such as Wonder Woman in my art. And right now, in 2025, I'm working on a series called Warriors Waging Peace, with life-size figures that have on their skins, to me, their skins, quotes about themes I address, such as war, fear, diversity, androgyny. Focusing now on the Reading tapestry, I chose these 11 women after much research into the time of the Holocaust as a celebration of those who battle against hatred. This battle resonates across different political and cultural perspectives. Note that I want to emphasize the broader message of courage, resilience, and standing up against oppression, rather than discussing explicitly any current geopolitical conflict or endorsing any modern political stance. So I ask you for a moment now to let your mind explore with me as you imagine yourself one night at 3 in the morning, you're fast asleep, and suddenly awakened by a loud knock on the door. In semi-slumber, you drag yourself to the door, and with the latch firmly in place, you peek out. Before you is a person in rags, looking close to death and pleading, "Let me in your house, please. They will kill me unless you hide me." Quick, now, what do? You know that if you say yes and the authorities find out, you run the risk that not only you, but your spouse, parents, children, and the rest of your family and friends might be murdered. Most people leave the door closed and say no. But some, a few, open it and let the person in. These are the rescuers who protect the vulnerable, giving thought to neither their own safety nor bravery, and hardly considering themselves heroes at all. These are the ones who would say years later, "I could have done nothing else. It was the only humane thing to do." Often in the comfort of my home or studio, or on a quiet outing, I think, as many might, of the role I would play in this setting. Would I be the rescuer, the brave upstander? Or would I be the bystander who notices victimization, but then continues concentrating on my busy day and needs? I'm not sure. Can any of us be sure, except those who maybe have faced it themselves? What defines bravery? What makes a hero? How do we answer this in our own lives? So consider now another situation. Now imagine yourself captive in a prison where you're treated so despicably that the simple everyday spoon becomes a vital tool of survival. Let's see if we can make this work now. The story starts with a spoon, a simple spoon. A man comes over to a woman in a concentration camp with a spoon and gives it to her. He looks at her and says, "When can we meet?" So she knows that the gift is in exchange for sexual favors. As they passed around that filthy urn with watery gruel, it was known that tuberculosis germs were on that rim. Anyone with a spoon that could dip into the middle of the urn felt protected in a way. She throws the spoon at him spontaneously, not thinking, and then realizes, "My God, what did I do? He's going to hurt me." So she runs away and hides. But instead, he takes the spoon and brings it over to another woman. She takes it and says yes. What would you do in a situation like this? How do you keep your self-respect, and survive. My artwork, my activism has been about the continuum between bullying and bravery, persecution and protection. A spoon became a metaphor for me. I use the shell also as a metaphor for power versus vulnerability. Our culture is a bullying kind of culture. So I've coined the 4 Bs. The 4 Bs are the bully, there's the bullied,
person who just sits around doing nothing and someone's being bullied, which is called the bystander.
most people are bystanders.
The bystander doesn't help.
Bully, bullied, bystander, and the brave upstander.
Grave upstander.
Brave upstander.
Which is the person that ends up standing up anyway.
It's really being a fighter. It's being a fighter for right.
Bullies are scared. All they need to do is be approached and they can be stopped.
Kids have natural empathy unless it's shamed or beaten out of them. The good news about being human is that we're adaptable, so the species survives. And the bad thing about being human is that we're adaptable. So if we are put in a group in which violence is normalized, we think it's normal.
It is very clear that the Holocaust would not have been possible but for individuals who started off their lives as bullies and then took that mindset to a horrific conclusion.
The ultimate bully, the ultimate terrorist was Hitler during the Holocaust.
However, it is very clear in the context of the horrors that were being perpetrated. It was possible not to lose one's humanity. It was possible to not just survive, but to survive and to help others.
I would like every child to know the name of Ruth Gruber, Anne Frank, Vitka Kempner, Nora Khan, Zivia Lubetkin, Nadezhda Popova, Hadassah Rosensaft, Hannah Senesh, Gertrude Luckner, Nancy Wake. These are the 10 women that represent different aspects of bravery during the Holocaust. Some chose to enter into the military, some became journalists, some became diarists. They took men and they brought them into hiding places. They had 600 Jews that they transported from the ghetto to the woods so that they could fight against the Germans.
My mother kept 149 Jewish children alive in what became known as a children's home. What I can remember is people coming up to my mother saying, Dr. Bimko, you don't remember me, but you saved my life.
I read that and I think, oh, I hope I would have been you. I just hope I would have had the moxie and the originality.
It just makes me crazy when I see situations of huge unfairness. I mean, you can use what you do to right the balance a little bit.
Art induces people to think about things, to, most importantly, experience things.
If there is artwork where you see individuals who were able to stand up to malevolent authorities, it makes everyone question, would I have had the courage to stand up and do the right thing? We each have inside ourselves bravery that we may not have even tapped into. Courage and bravery is not the lack of fear, it's proceeding in spite of it. So I ask, what would it take for you to be an upstander rather than a bystander?
You have to be fierce.
So fierce, that word. Can we speak of Anne Frank, a child in a real life Kafka-esque nightmare, as being fierce? I think we can. Bravely, she went about her daily chores in the face of such brutality. Fiercely, she pursued her writing. It grounded the influence her words had on so many. In fact, learning about her was my own introduction to World War II and the Holocaust. Fierce is a word I use proudly, though at first some had said to me, don't use it, it's unladylike. Another word I use proudly is hero. Why choose that word and not heroine to describe each of these brave females? To answer that, you have to understand that a kind of movie clip goes around in my mind when I think of the word heroine, in which the fragile gal is tied to the railroad tracks, screaming for help as the train is fast approaching, only to be saved by the gallant lad or lads just in the nick of time. In my mind, the gal being saved is the heroine. The lad doing the saving is the hero. I couldn't let this stereotype stand for these courageous females. Each of them, indeed, is a hero. And many have asked, where does my obsession with this theme of protection come from? Well, it's particularly vivid in my mind since running for an entire day from the ground zero area in New York during 9/11. It now seems like a natural artistic progression from 9/11 running for protection to World War II and the Holocaust, where protection was in such short supply. I couldn't stop reading about it, knowing it would take a lifetime of studying without ever coming close to understanding how human beings could have allowed this Holocaust to happen. So now let's look at the heroes I chose to represent bravery in the face of genocidal persecution. And notice how I use superheroes, pop culture, and religious icons in my work to make comparisons between real life and fantasy figures. In this tapestry, Anne Frank may be the most well-known. She died in 1945 before she could live out 16 years. Anne represents the many brave girls during this period and exemplifies the loss and legacy of the 1.5 million Jewish children murdered during the time of the Holocaust. In detail, this detail from my tapestry, you see Nausicaa. Anne Frank would have liked Nausicaa, I think, an anti-war character from anime who is committed to love and understanding, especially when she calmly, very calmly talks down an aggressive monster, convincing him to go back to the jungle without hurting anyone.
You need to return to your jungle, understand? You need to return to your jungle.
And he does return to the jungle. I also include Lisbeth Salander from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Storm, the superhero from X-Men comic books, Wonder Woman, but only from 1941 to 47, and Lady Gaga, who needs no introduction at all. I like to use these pop culture icons to reach my younger and older audiences in different ways. Art paves the way for learning about women like Ruth Gruber, an American photojournalist, writer, and humanitarian. She lived, incidentally, to be 105 years old. I think people that have gone through such trauma tend to value life so and hold on to it for many elderly years. As a special assistant to Secretary of the Interior Harold Ickes, she had a secret mission in 1944. She was to accompany 1,000 traumatized Jewish refugees aboard a military ship, taking them from Italy to upstate New York. President Roosevelt issued the invitation by executive order, circumventing Congress's refusal to lift the quota on Jewish immigrants. My God, how can we not think of the refugees and immigrants now struggling to be allowed into any country where they could feel safe? We're in such a terrible conundrum these days, and it's all about otherness. Vita Kempner was a leader of the armed resistance in the United Partisan Organization in the Vilna Ghetto of Poland. She fought alongside the founder, Abba Kovna, whom she later married. Of the two, he was the poet, the articulate orator who said, "Let us not go like sheep to the slaughter," while she was the saboteur, fearless in combat. Kempner was the first woman to play a role in blowing up a Nazi train. Over and over, she stole out of the ghetto for her group to deliver and get secret messages. And when caught by SS men, she always got away by pretending that she was a non-Jew who just lost her way. Noor Inayat Khan was a special operations executive agent. She became the first female radio operator sent from Britain to aid the French resistance. For a while, she was the only one with that job in all of occupied Paris. Why? Why did she put herself in jeopardy as she did? Her father came from a noble Indian Muslim family. At times, Khan was called the spy princess because she was a descendant of an 18th century ruler of the Kingdom of Mysore in southern India. She could have lived out her life in luxury, instead choosing to support the war effort as a radio operator. Once she was caught on the radio by a Nazi superior. She later told everyone that she saved her life by saying to him, "I must listen to my jazz music on BBC, please. Music is so important to me. Don't let them take away my radio." In spite of her continued success, she was eventually caught, imprisoned, and executed. How old? 30 years old. She would have liked Lady Gaga, I think, who incidentally launched an anti-bullying foundation at Harvard University. Then there's Zivia Lubetkin, the founder and the only woman in high command of the ZOB resistance group and a leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, one of only 34 uprising fighters to survive the war. She helped to lead this group through the sewers of Warsaw. That sounds like fun. She testified as a witness in Jerusalem's 1961 Eichmann trial, and would, I think, have been a fan of Wonder Woman, who, of course, as a superhero, could use her magic bracelets, lasso, and invisible plane to defeat the villains. But get this, she defeated the villains, Wonder Woman, without ever killing. But Lubetkin had no such accoutrement. So in referencing fantasy icons and real-life heroes, Have Art Will Travel discusses leadership with future leaders coming to New York from every part of the world. We start with tapestries and sculpture from the exhibit, and then we talk about the bullying and bigotry in their own countries and how they see themselves as heroes and upstanders on an everyday personal level, as well as on a community and global level. They're so earnest in voicing their concerns about helping people around the world. Some body swap with my sculptures, as did the two girls on the right of this photo, and all talk about wanting to make their mark on society as leaders. Speaking of leaders, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories about a little leader. I held a hot workshop in California called She is My Hero. 9-year-olds were asked to choose a female hero, bring in photos and trinkets about her, and make collages with me. Hart later took 43 of these collages and made them into indoor-outdoor banners. Before the workshop, I was told, if you put a microphone into a 9-year-old's hand, They'll answer any question. So first I asked, who was your hero? And I got lots of responses. Then I asked, what's a hero? What words would you use to define hero? And they said, you have to be strong, brave, kind, courageous. They said kind. Then I asked, were you ever a hero? And there was this pause. And then a little girl raised her hand, took the microphone, and said, well, when Betsy started making fun of Johnny, I went over to Betsy and said, cut that out. Don't be a bully. Leave Johnny alone. Then I went over to Johnny and said, don't listen to Betsy. I'll be your friend. She thought for a minute, put her hands on her hips, and said, I guess I was a hero. A favorite mission of Hort is to learn about leaders like Gertrude Luckner, who inspired young and old to become everyday heroes instead of bystanders. Luckner led the Freiburg Catholics in Germany with money she received from the Archbishop. She smuggled out Jews over the Swiss border and delivered messages from the beleaguered Jewish community. After the war, Luckner devoted herself to furthering understanding between Jews and Christians. She would have related to Kanon, the Buddhist deity of mercy and protection, whom people turn to even now when seeking solace. And Nadezhda Popova, one of the first female military pilots in the Soviet Union. Popova was highly decorated with awards including the title Hero, yes, Hero of the Soviet Union, the Gold Star Medal, and 3 orders of the Red Star. Known as a night witch, she flew not a broom, but what looks like a very rickety wooden plane while bombing hostile territory. I think Popova would have related to Storm, known for compassion as well as courage. Now, Hadassah Bimko Rosensaft was a dentist. Because of her medical training, she was assigned to work in the Jewish infirmary at Auschwitz, where she helped rehabilitate many, many survivors. I won't forget her testimony at the Eichmann trial, and I ask you now to steel yourself for my next few words, because it's important not to soften the horrors that people faced. Rosensaft described at the trial a pregnant woman made to lie on the floor, then stomped on by a German officer until woman and child were dead. You saw her son, Menachem Rosensaft, in the short film before. He's so very proud of his mother. How can he not be? Hannah Senish, have you heard of her? As one of 37 Jews from Mandatory Palestine, she was parachuted by the British Army into Yugoslavia during the Second World War. Regarded as a national hero in Israel, where her poetry is widely known, she was arrested at the Hungarian border, imprisoned, and tortured, but she never revealed any details of her mission. She was executed by firing squad. What age? 23. Senish may have felt a kinship with Princess Mononoke, an anime character many of you know, who was determined to save the environment. Which Holocaust hero did you do first? Some have asked me. The first was Nancy Wake. She became a leading figure in the French resistance while serving as a British agent. She was one of the Allies' most decorated servicewomen during the war. As a reporter, she never forgot seeing Jews beaten on the streets of Berlin. Later, she lived as a grande dame in France, where she and her husband held fabulous parties in their magnificent home. She too could have lived out her life in luxury, but she gave that all up to fight in the trenches and bring hundreds of Jews to safety by taking them through the French Alps. When older, she actually apologized for having to be pushed when parachuting out of a plane. She was embarrassed that she couldn't jump without a push. I recently, by the way, met someone at one of my lectures who said many men too needed a push. So I guess it's not so uncommon. After my Holocaust Heroes book was published, and while thinking about the rigid male-female roles in the 1940s, I discovered my next hero. Here's a bit of the interview I did with her son. This is the son of the hero. And I slowly learned more and more about his coming to America at 5 years old in 1940 and how his mother took the lead in their escape. I was intrigued by his mother's strength, courage, and yes, fierceness in insisting on and arranging for the family's flight from Luxembourg in the face of Nazi atrocities. By fierceness, I don't mean violence or killing. I mean intensity, strength, and passion. A fierce woman is powerful, ardent, fevered, fervent, forceful. That's how I see Ray's mother, born in 1908 in the German Rhineland. Holocaust Heroes, Fierce Females includes a tapestry highlighting Ray's mother, who represents a facet of female heroism during the Holocaust that I had not previously explored. It is one that addresses the escape of a family of means, believing themselves to be German to the core, well-dressed, elegant, sophisticated, intelligent, patriotic, and proud of kin, Ray's grandfather, who received a World War I Iron Cross for fighting on behalf of the Germans. A family that had the resources and will to leave everything behind to start again in an unfamiliar land. It was Ray Learzy's mother. Learzy, incidentally, is formed from Israel, spelled backwards, who overrode her husband's wish to stay in Luxembourg. His thinking was that the Maginot Line would protect them from any Nazi invasion. Her thinking was that they must leave immediately while they could. Their status and wherewithal in Luxembourg eased their journey in many ways, but it is a journey which highlights a very heroic woman and a side of the Holocaust which I believe must be told. In the telling, with tapestry and interview, one finds that the German bureaucrats, embracing systematized and regimented minutiae, bizarrely took the time to write a formal, courteous letter to Ray's mother after she arrived in America, matter-of-factly reporting the confiscation of everything her family owned. Of course, they never got back one single thing that they owned, but they kept, thankfully, their lives. So, Have Art Will Travel's multimedia traveling exhibition consists of several parts. Heroic tapestries showing brave females at different stages of their lives, spoon-to-shell box sculptures with the spoon and shell addressing power and vulnerability, a larger-than-life protector sculpture with a Wonder Woman shadow, of course, representing the fierceness and strength of the rescuer. The 7-minute film you saw toward the beginning of my talk, a Holocaust Heroes book as a softcover, hard or ebook, and lots of educational workshops and encounters, including a magic scarf performance by local poets, dancers, and essayists. As Holocaust Heroes is traveling internationally, let us know if this exhibit and workshop might be good to come to your venue, or if our published book can be in your institution's library or collection. Hort's curricula team, with international educators, 8 of whom you see here, led its first New York Summer Institute in 2015. We interact with all ages, travel everywhere, and we welcome audiences to our our Tribeca, New York loft, where everyone enjoys putting on a sculpture while walking around the gallery area and looking into a mirror and seeing themselves. Again, more information about each hero can be found on Reading's interactive tool about this artwork. And an extra note, please feel free to email me and apply to either of Hart's 2 awards, one for $3,500 in US dollars and a second one for those with an artistic flair and storyline for a Hart comic book on social justice and anti-bullying. We at Hart want to discuss issues connected to bullying and oppression versus upstanding and kindness. We know that art can inspire people to be brave upstanders. We just have to have empathy and we have to be fierce.